Welcome back to the Motor Show here on Talk Radio. Now, as you know, if you're a regular listener to the show, we don't always put our focus just on cars and getting out on the road. In actual fact, we've had a kind of mantra here for quite a long time, which is that we want to find fascinating people. And the feedback that we've had from you guys at home is that we're doing pretty well with that. In fact, Sam, who's one of the producers on the show, he's able to discover gems. And I'm pleased to say we have a gem. Well, I have a gem sat opposite me right now. Please welcome to the show, Vanessa O'Brien. How are you doing, Vanessa?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
Now, Vanessa, when you were asked to come on a show that's called The Motor Show, you must have thought, what? What's that all about?
Well, I thought it was because I've driven in a Bugatti at 250 miles an hour.
And there it is. Thanks for coming in. No, yes, we'll talk about that. That sounds amazing. But I want to talk to you about your achievements, because you have done things that, it's the stuff of childhood legend. You have literally lived the dream in a way that what we're about to talk about, I'm going to find absolutely terrifying whilst also being fascinating. So I want to tell you in advance, I'm massively in awe of you. I can't believe you've done it. Wow. Congratulations. What on earth am I talking about? Why don't you fill me in? Okay,
perfect. Well, you could be talking about a number of things, but most recently it was becoming the first British woman to climb the second highest mountain in the world. That's called K2.
Yeah.
K for Karakoram, 2 for second highest. It really doesn't have any other names. It does, but they're not applicable. So that is in Pakistan, and it took me 3 years to get there, to get to the top. So every year I managed to get to a camp higher. So Camp 2, Camp 3, huge avalanches wipe us out. But this year we got all the way to the summit. It wasn't easy. Horrendously deep snow, really, really high winds, low temperatures, just freezing conditions, white out, everything that you can imagine that would go wrong at 8,611 meters, went wrong, except that when we got to the top, the sky opened up for the most miraculous blue skies. Wow. For amazing pictures. So that almost made it worth it. Almost.
Really?
Except we had to come down in the dark, and that's...
Did you couldn't have just stayed up for a bit?
Well, you don't really stay up that long. You stay up for, 15 or 20 minutes, but it feels like a minute, right?
Really?
Because you're taking it all in, you're taking some video, some pictures, but there's condensation, so the cameras don't last that long either. You have to remember, it took us 16 hours to climb that 1,000 meters, because of this terrible weather. But even then, you're only halfway. Because you got to get down.
Yeah.
And when you think about halfway, you're like, halfway, 85% of deaths happen on the way down. So this was my 5th 8,000 meter peak. So I was well aware of, the very large memorial. For every 4 that climbs K2, 1 dies. So I'm well aware of the number of deaths on that mountain. But getting down is not optional, right? You have to...
It's
leave.
True. No one thinks about the descent.
No one thinks about the descent, but you're knackered, right? So you're out of energy, you're dehydrated, you're fatigued, and it takes some effort to get up, right? One step, 1 foot, one push of a leg on top of another, but it takes little effort to fall down.
Yeah.
You could slide down, you can rig a rappel wrong, you can arm rappel off an old rope. So easy to fall down to your death.
Oh, man. You see, here's what I thought happened, right? You go through the incredible, exhausting, phenomenal experience of getting to the top, and then you're full of, wow, yeah, I've done it. Yeah, this is amazing. I'd never think, I just assume you can kind of, somehow you have all this energy and it's easy to get back.
Well, it's because you watch lots of Hollywood films.
I do.
And that's exactly what happens in Hollywood films.
Yeah.
Because you have that moment of euphoria and everybody's doing high fives, and it's like,
so
yes.
do you not have that?
Well, you have you have a vision of that, and you want to do that, but it's taking you 16 hours to get there, so you're knackered, of course, and you're thirsty, and and where you are, right? And so
it doesn't sound fun.
Well, you don't have to have fun to have fun.
Okay,
that's a huge misconception that's out there. Fun is massively overrated. So you don't have to have fun to have fun.
So talk to me about the challenge. Why did you? I mean, what got you on this adventure? I think I'm going to climb K2. I mean, more people have been in space than have successfully been up K2, haven't they?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, there's been 60 female astronauts. Only 20 women have climbed K2. Can you imagine? 3 times the number of women astronauts than have been on the summit of K2. And for men, there's been 24 men who have been on low Earth orbit. So, very good analogy with those astronauts. Why? I can't say because it's there, that's taken. But what I could say is it's really, really hard. And sometimes when you can't think of anything harder to do, something presents itself, and there it is. But there are some legitimate reasons. I had with me not only the Union Jack, and these things are still a little bit about national pride, but I had with me the UN Women flag.
Okay. So
there's a little bit of that, we can get there, like we being women. And in a country like Pakistan, that's also symbolic.
Right.
There's all sorts of stuff. There's, female racing car drivers these days,
sure.
Right? I mean, they're popping up in all sorts of professions. So there's that sense of pride. There's also things that you can do at the top that we need people to do at the top, like measure glacier samples.
Okay.
If you want to say that a glacier is melting from the top down, we need mountaineers to get those samples. You can't take them any other way. So, only boots on the ground will do that. So there's some legitimate reasons to go.
Yeah.
Besides just the one of ego, which says I can do it.
So let's talk about you, because, we've only spoken about K2, but that is just one of a very long list of achievements. We've got to talk about what you've done on skis at some point as well. But, what I'm getting when I look at your CV of astonishing things, remarkable achievements. And by the way, we need to quickly touch on your accent. You've called yourself British twice now. Our listeners might be like, well, hang on, which doesn't sound British. Where's the accent from?
Oh, I do a terrible accent. Well, the problem is, having lived in England now, with my British passport for 20 years, having grown up in America, it makes me sound Canadian, which is just dreadful, right? I mean,
is it?
Trust me, it's dreadful.
Oh, okay.
So I probably sound Canadian because I'm saying American words I'm saying British words with an American accent. That's definitely Canadian. It's just it's all the wrong way around.
Okay, I'm enjoying
it. Yeah. I apologize to your listeners.
Hey, listen, nothing to apologize for. So let's go back to you. Where did this craving for adventure come from? Where did this kind of need to achieve? Where did that happen from?
Not from the back of a cereal box or anything like that. I think it's I think there's just a love of the outdoors and a love of being able to go out there and a sense of play. I'd love to get more children and even adults outside more often, because people spend far too much time inside. There's such a big world out there. There's such a big world to go out and see and be adventurous and do things outside. And there's nothing that breaks my heart more than to see a family at dinner and everybody's on their iPhones or their iPads and nobody's talking.
Yeah.
And I love the signs at restaurants that say no Wi-Fi, sorry, you'll have to talk to each other. Something like that. That's awesome. We've lost the art of conversation. We've lost the ability to interact, and it's technology's taken over. And I love technology, don't get me wrong, but you have to get outdoors and you have to experience nature. And that's probably my sense of adventure came from, spending a lot of time outdoors when I was younger and appreciating where just getting lost can take you.
I mean, listen, I spent a lot of time in my youth outdoors. I live in a wood these days. I've never gone, I've got to climb that massive mountain. I've got to get some skis on and do the poles. I've never thought that. There's something in you that's obviously, I mean, where did it come from? Is it from your family? Has something happened to you as a teenager where you're just like, I can achieve something? What's the motivator? Because you're an outlier. As Malcolm Gladwell would call you, you're an outlier. You seek this and you've achieved it and you've done it. What is it that drives you, that makes you go on to do the next one?
Well, so part of it is, I think mountaineering is a metaphor. It's a metaphor for, whatever you want to achieve in life, right? So it's being able to take that one more step. So if you have a goal in mind, it's like, go ahead and set it. Once you get there, you're not done. You just set another goal, right? It could be the end of the earth. at 90 degrees. That could be north, that could be south. That's okay. You, by the way, can't go any further.
Yeah.
But you can circle the world very quickly by standing at the bottom and just going around really fast. You have now accomplished around the world, which is kind of fun.
Nice.
But, some of these places are exotic, and they could be very cold. They can be very hostile. And that could be in the terrain. It could be in the people. There's all sorts of different things that make a place welcoming or not welcoming. But I think the number one thing that explorers have is curiosity.
Okay.
It's a good trait, and I would love for children to be encouraged to have curiosity. It's just a search for answers. To be curious about where it is, what it is, why is it there, how far is it, all of those things. And that will lead you to a path to find answers. And that's how we'll solve lots of riddles in the future, whether it leads to, answers of medicines coming from the rainforest or answers for the next cure for cancer. I mean, it's that sense of curiosity that will lead for not only play and fun and enjoyment, but answers to real serious problems.
I think that's amazing. You've been to some of the most extreme, remote, isolated parts this planet has to offer. I think you've been to pretty much all of them in different ways. What have you learned about yourself?
Well, I learned that I can't control everything, which is very frustrating. So, nature is ultimately in control. And that's a very humbling experience, because you can have the best logistics and you can be the best planner and you can, be in the best health, but it doesn't matter because Mother Nature is ultimately in charge. And she's a force. There's, wild oceans and, huge storms and jet streams and all sorts of things that, affect, everything from, and we've seen it recently. Think about all the extreme weather patterns that we've experienced everywhere in the world that are causing, not only the large extreme storms, but the frequency in which we're having them. It's more frequent than ever, and they're one on top of the other, and they're this place and that place, and it feels like we're tornado chasing in a way.
Sure.
And a lot of this is having to do with, the cycles of maybe the changing in the I'll call it climate change rather than global warming, which is hopefully less controversial. But yes, I mean, I would say I can't control everything, and that's extremely humbling.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, listen, I could talk to you and hear you chatting all night and all day, because I just think it's incredible what you've achieved and what you've seen. But I've sort of touched on what you've done on skis, and I'm mindful that if I don't come back to it, people are going to be like, what on earth is he on about? Tell us what you did recently on a pair of skis.
Sure, absolutely. So on skis is we use skis to go to the North and the South Pole. That's the geographic North and South. So you can do this a number of ways, but at a minimum, we like to go the last degree, which a degree is 60 nautical miles, which is about 111 kilometers. So you get dropped off at the 89th parallel, so that could be north or south. Yeah. And then you ski, you navigate to the north or the south. Now, they're very, very different climates. Just to give you a sense of that, at the South Pole, heading toward the South Pole, you are on land. You're on Antarctica. Antarctica is a continent, but it's also one of the driest deserts. Even though it's cold, it has less than 1% of rainfall a year. So it's a cold desert with very, very dry air. Now, the North Pole is the exact opposite. You are no longer on land. You are on a floating bit of ice. Hopefully you're still on ice. The ice is melting. So there, as you're crossing the Arctic Ocean, you're going to be encountering huge, open water leads that you might have to cross in open water. So your flood acts like a flotation device, which sounds a little bit like when you're in an airplane and your seat cushion acts like a flotation device.
Sure.
But, you might have to cross open water. You also come across these huge, where the ice comes together and forms these huge barriers of big blocks of ice that you have to pull your sled over, which is very, very hard on skis. The sleds weigh, 80 to 100 pounds. And when you sleep at night, you could say ski toward that North Pole destination, and because while you sleep, the ice is moving, what ends up happening is you could wake up and have negated the entire distance that you captured the day before because of the currents and the winds. So you're effectively moving.
That'd be heartbreaking.
Yeah, you're moving toward a moving target.
Yeah.
Which is just a mind game. Extremely hard work. And then even worse, once you do get to the geographic North Pole, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hooray! Oh no, it's gone.
It's gone again. Yeah. What?
So, it's like, oh no, like, it's terrible. Like, you can't even take the picture in time that you're there and it's gone. So it's so frustrating. It's a very frustrating point to get to. So most people don't appreciate that about the North Pole. It is not a fixed place. It's a moving place, and that, when you're trying to get there, you're constantly moving because you're on ice.
How much of it, this is the dumbest question I'm going to ask you. Well, I say that, and it's probably not. We call it the North Pole, the South Pole. Is there actually a pole there?
Well, there are ceremonial things, yes.
Somebody's put
put something there, yes.
Right.
So there are markers, but it's easier to mark something in the South Pole because there's the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. So there are people who live and work there all year round.
Okay.
Now, the South Pole is almost uninhabitable in the winter, which is the opposite season to us, and that, you can't. It's minus, 200 degrees or something. You can't physically go outside. So they effectively live indoors all year in the opposite seasons. So it's, but they do remain there and work as scientists all year round.
Gosh.
And it's almost like just an incubator space station in the winter months in Antarctica. And the North Pole is not, as far as I know, for 1 month only. There are scientists from the Russian Geographic Society, from Siberia mostly, that stay for maybe 20 days only during the month of April.
I don't blame them. Fair enough. I'll take those 20 days. You have seen some miraculous and terrifying things. You must have gone through physically exhausting, shattering, painful experiences. What wakes you up at night?
Oh, it's when you're on high altitude mountains over 8,000 meters, it's a constant state of awareness because we're worried about things like avalanches. So if there's increased precipitation or something like that, it's a bit like you're constantly on, you're constantly switched on. You can never. It's like sleeping with one eye open, or like waiting for something to go wrong.
Yeah.
And that does wear down the body in like huge stress.
Yeah.
Huge stress. Like you get home and there's like huge clumps of hair coming out, and like all sorts of stress factors and stuff, just because you have been literally on you're just adrenaline, cortisol, all that stuff like flowing through your body, almost like in a state of panic and stress, just waiting for an avalanche to fall through a crevasse, to, have to pack up a dead body, to, all sorts of stuff, just waiting for the worst of the worst to happen. So imagine that happening for 6 weeks in a row, and then you come home and it's like, you're confronted with trivial, silly things like opening the mail, or,
Gonna get your TV license.
Yeah, just something mundane.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not quite life-threatening, and it's not important, and it doesn't have to be done now.
Yeah.
So, but yet it's not something as important as like, PTSD or something like that. But there's some after effects that come down that I think are kind of physically interesting. And then we spend time in the death zone, so that's over 8,000 meters. People don't have there's no reason to be up there. Your body starts to die. We're just under the troposphere. That's where all the weather takes place under there. So we're just where planes start to fly. And, there's the human body's not meant to live. So you're physically, your cognitive ability starts to decline. Your adrenals start to shut down, so your kidneys are starting to fail, and your digestive system has shut down. So it's not a lovely place.
I mean, you could do that, or you could come out with me on a Saturday night. I mean, it's one of the two, really. They both have similar effects. What's next, Vanessa? You've done so much, but you clearly you are oozing this spirit of intrigue and adventure. What's next on your calendar of amazing things?
Yeah, I mean, there's I feel like there's a big giant world out there, and there's a lot to see and do. But I think through the course of time, the more time you spend in the world, the more you move over from an adventurer to an explorer. So the difference being, in my opinion, learning about yourself versus trying to give back to the rest of the world. So I've moved more toward wanting to give back in terms of science and nature and the environment, and taking part in studies. And sometimes I use myself as a study, and sometimes I'm using, collecting samples or things like that. So I've become more interested in doing that of late than the first part.
Wow. Vanessa, you're an inspiration, and I wish we had more time to talk. It'd be remiss of me not to touch on the Bugatti, incidentally, 250 miles an hour. What was that all about?
Oh, well, that's, sometimes, mountains end up going into other parts of exploration and adventure. So I was in a Bugatti at 250. I've also been shot by a .38 caliber testing bulletproof vests. Turns out you can't get shot anywhere, so I had to get shot in Colombia. But sixth woman to get shot at point blank range. So yes, we do all sorts of things.
Can I just say to our listeners, we do not advocate travelling at 250 miles an hour, even in secure conditions, or getting shot, even in a security bulletproof vest with an expert. Don't do that at home. Don't do that anywhere. You know what I mean? Unless Vanessa's there with you, in which case that's up to you.
Exactly. So extreme adventures are left only in the hands of professionals.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear. Vanessa, you've been an absolute joy. I'd love to get you back on and talk to you more and more detail. But for now, thank you very much for your company.
Thank you. Lovely to spend time with you. Thank you.
Brilliant.